how difficult will it be for Donald Trump to step back from this war? After all the heavy offensive he's mounted and all the bravado he's shown in this war, for him to step back, and how difficult?
Stupid comments like I accept nothing unless there is a complete total surrender by Iran. That's one comment he's made. The other, he said, I'm going to choose who's going to be a successor by choosing a really hardcore. I mean, the Iranians couldn't have picked a hardliner more than Mujtaba Khamenei. So their selection of Mujtaba Khamenei is in very crude language, F you Trump. That is their message to Trump. And forget about, I think if Trump had not said that they need to check with me, maybe Mujtaba would not have been elected. I think it is a reaction to Trump saying, I want to select who will be the next leader of Iran. I think they selected one who is the most anti-West and the most aggressive in terms of his rejection of the West. So the Iranians are not backing off. That is very clear.
What is going to be the impact on India? And we also don't have any kind of a policy for LPG reserves.
So this is very important, and I will try to be very succinct, but also very clear. And if possible, if you can also extract this particular answer and float it as a separate video, it might be very helpful. Number one, India is the most vulnerable when it comes to gas. Okay, 85% of India's gas comes from Qatar.
Hormuz.
Remember, it comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So India's about 60% of India's energy, 60 to 70% comes from the Strait of Hormuz, then China, then Japan, and South Korea. These are the four countries which are most affected. With gas, it's India and Europeans who are most affected with gas.
So which means that India gets zero LPG supply. I mean, it's
No,
totally...
There are three other places where you can go, which is Russia, US, and Canada. So in America has, in another humiliating fashion, given India the license. Have you seen the license actually?
Yes.
They've given a license, I think it's called 140, to buy Russian oil, but very limited Russian oil, which is on boards after March 5th for 1 month. So India can buy basically petroleum, but gas, there is no discussion about it. So, and for Trump, this is a great opportunity to sell gas at a much higher price, because what is happening is gas is coming by ship, not by pipeline to India, right?
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. US President Donald Trump has threatened to hit Iran 20 times harder if it stops oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, hours after saying that the war could end very soon. Now, how soon is the war going to end? That is not very clear, but he has hinted that the war will end soon. After that, we saw the share market showing positively, and the prices of the crude oil also going down, and some say by about 30%. Now, large crowds gathered across Iran in support of the new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, as Tehran says it not the US will determine the end of the conflict. Now, Iran keeps up its counterattacks on Israel and US assets in the Middle East, including in Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. At least 2 people were killed in Israel. And Israel and Hezbollah trade fire as death toll from Israeli attacks in Lebanon surpass 486 people. So the big question is that, is the US, Israel and Iran war really ending anytime soon? And have the goals been met? And is that the reason why Donald Trump is saying that the war could end soon? Of course, we will also talk about the LPG, the impact on India, because here in India, there are huge reports of how there is an LPG crisis growing in states like Karnataka, where the hoteliers and the restaurant owners have closed down the hotels. Then there was a report in Pune where the crematoriums, which were dependent on LPG, they have closed down. Now, how serious is this LPG crisis for India? And can India really tackle this in a sensible manner? Joining me this evening is a very special guest, international affairs expert, and someone who follows diplomacy and foreign affairs very, very closely. And he joins us from Delaware in America, Professor Dr. Muktedar Khan, who has his own YouTube channel, which is very popular, called The Conversations. You've seen him very often on that. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan, for joining on HW News. And my first question to you is that the announcement coming by Donald Trump that the war is going to end soon. Now, how formal is this announcement? Or he's just made off-the-cuff remark?
So, first of all, hello to you, Nilu, and to your viewers. And so, first of all, I don't think that Donald Trump is the boss of this war. So he's not going to decide. He did not decide to start this war. It was started by Netanyahu. Marco Rubio revealed as much that they were forced into this war because Netanyahu was going to start it anyway. And so this war is not going to stop. So, for example, if you notice, in Gaza, we say that the ceasefire has taken place, but Netanyahu continues to kill Gazans endlessly. So what is going to happen is if Trump takes a unilateral decision and says the war is over, it is quite possible that, imagine if Mujtaba goes to his office, Mujtaba Khamenei, thinking, oh, the war is over. I guarantee you Israel will hit him if they have the intelligence, right? So that will be the end of the war.
No, but this brings me to the question, Dr. Khan, that is this statement deliberately made by Donald Trump to hoodwink Iran so that, Mujtaba can be rest assured that, okay, the war is ending and he can sit pretty comfortable?
I think the two indicators were very troubling in the early day, in the morning. One was that the stock markets were all down by 3%. The bond market, stock markets are roughly 3% down, which is huge. We are talking of trillions of dollars when you say 3%. And the oil prices were the highest since COVID and the beginning of the Ukraine war. It had reached $119 per barrel today, if you remember. So there were two announcements that Donald Trump made. One announcement was that the G7 countries are going to release their strategic reserves of oil. So they are going to increase the supply of oil in the market. The reason why the price was going out is because Iran has more or less shut down the Strait of Hormuz. On an average, about 140 to 150 tankers go through Strait of Hormuz every day. Every day, we are talking 140 to 150. Now it's down to 2 or 3 who are taking a risk. So even if there is no threat, the cost of insurance has gone so much that many liners, shipping companies are not taking the risk of going through Hormuz and paying that high interest rates. And so there's a lot of troubling decision making for the ship owners and etc. to go through that. There's a risk involved. If you notice that 2 Indians have already been killed who are sailors, one is missing. So there is danger there, not that it is not there. So by bringing more oil into the market, the G7 essentially brought down the price, but it could be temporary. You see, that's the thing. The second thing is that when Donald Trump said that the war is going to end soon or is very nearly complete, he was trying to signal 2 things. One is that, okay, this war is not going to go beyond the 4 or 5 weeks that we had suggested. One, and number 2, there's going to be no boots on the ground. He didn't say as much, but that is what he means. If the war is about to end, that means there's going to be no boots on the ground. And I think that was something which kind of stabilized the markets. And so if you notice, they recovered back to that 3% that was lost. So I'm quite amazed at the optimism on Wall Street at the moment, that it is not tanking. So, but I'm not very sure that we should take Donald Trump's statements every day. So there are tactical goals and there are strategic goals.
There's a slight contradiction also if you look at the way Donald Trump is saying that the war will end anytime soon. And if you look at the statements coming from IRGC, they are saying that it's not Donald Trump who's going to decide who's going to end the war, and the reign is in their hands. Now, how does one read it? And who's going to step back, or who's going to blink first when it comes to ending this war? Is it Netanyahu? Is it Donald Trump? Is it IRGC?
So one of the strategic assumptions that IRGC is making is that America does not have the stomach for a long war. And they also believe that there is a race of munitions. Who is going to run out of ammunition faster? Will Iran run out of its 2,500 missiles that they have, or is America going to run out of defensive missiles for the Patriots missile, the THAAD missiles, and the Iron Dome of Israel? That is the question, right? So Iran is betting that maybe the US and Israel will run out of ammunition and Iran will continue the fight. And Iran believes that a longer war is going to be in their strategic advantage. That is the assumption that a lot of independent analysts also have made, that if the war goes on and on, it is going to hurt Donald Trump politically. And if the US is forced to put troops on the ground, then there will be more, unfortunately, fatalities and casualties of Americans. And he's going to continue to hit the Gulf. Iranians are so they're not going to let this war end like Donald Trump walked away.
How difficult will it be for Donald Trump to step back from this war? After all the heavy offensive he's mounted and all the bravado he's shown in this war, for him to step back, how difficult?
Stupid comments like I accept nothing unless there is a complete total surrender by Iran. That's one comment he's made. The other, he said, I'm going to choose who's going to be a successor by choosing a really hardcore. I mean, the Iranians couldn't have picked a hardliner more than Mujtaba Khamenei. So their selection of Mujtaba Khamenei is, in very crude language, F-U Trump. That is their message to Trump. And forget about, I think if Trump had not said that they need to check with me, maybe Mujtaba would not have been elected. I think it is reaction to Trump saying, I want to select who will be the next leader of Iran. I think they selected one who is the most anti-West and the most aggressive in terms of his rejection of the West. So the Iranians are not backing off. That is very clear. And what has happened is, that from now on, the marginal utility of American and Israeli attacks are going to diminish. They have lesser targets to hit and lesser damage going forward for the Iranians. And there is chances that there's going to be more war crimes already committing. So right now there is some kind of dark reign that is happening in Iran, and the world is condemning, because it's crimes against humanity what they're doing. And this is not going to just affect Iran. I think it could even affect Delhi and Central Asia. Once you start having rains, you could have acid rains or whatever, the fumes and all the petroleum that's gone into air. So from that point of view, I think the chances of the war ending quickly is not. It was Trump's choice to go to this war. It's not going to be Trump's choice to end this war. If he thinks it is, he has a surprise coming in. In fact, I just submitted an article to a very prominent Indian newspaper whose title is, Will the War on Iran Bring About Regime Change in Washington? Not in Tehran, but in Washington, because he could lose the November elections.
No, but how would you regime change? As in, you're talking about the midterm elections and how it unfolds?
Yes, the Democrats getting enough wins to impeach him. That's what I meant. Kick him out of office. Yeah, they need 3 or 4 in the House, and they need more in the Senate. That's the more difficult path. But if you have, look, the gas price in the US has gone up by 40 cents already. And the most important thing to Americans today is the affordability crisis, which means food is more expensive, rent is more expensive, transportation is more expensive, buying a house is next to impossible for people. And in the last 7 years, everything has gone up by 50-60% in cost. But the incomes have not kept pace. So people are earning less, spending more. So there is a major, life has become unaffordable in the US. And on top of that, he's spending billions to defend another country. So there's this whole issue going on. Who are we fighting for? Is it for Israel or Israel's, fanatical dreams? This is another Taliban. There's no difference at all. If you listen to Mike Huckabee's statements, in fact, these guys are more Taliban than the Taliban themselves, in terms of their fundamentalist approach to geopolitics.
Right. Okay, so that's a bit on Donald Trump, but I also want to talk to you about the response of India in times like these. Now, India, everybody is accusing India of almost being an America's lackey, and if that's the word I may use, they've almost surrendered in Parliament. Yesterday, also there was. Hangama in Parliament saying that the PM is compromised, and they've been doing it for quite some time now. And S. Jaishankar gave a response saying that we believe in dialogue and diplomacy, but not a single word of condemnation coming from him over the killings in Iran, or over the killing of Khamenei, or over the killing of those innocent girls. There was no word of condemnation, but a very generic statement. Now, how does India plan to take this forward? And is that response enough?
So first, the statement that Dr. Jaishankar made was very superficial. One of the things that has happened under this current government is the parliament has become useless. There are no parliamentary debates. Look at the question answer session in the British Parliament. The Prime Minister comes in and takes questions and answers them. I have not seen Modi take a question. He comes and makes a speech and then leaves. And then the same thing that Dr. Jaishankar did. He came and read the statement, and there was no discussion of what was going on. Because there are several important questions that he could not answer. Number one, he tried to pretend as if India is being neutral in this fight, right? He did not even condemn the United States and Israel for violating the UN Charter. India wants to become a permanent member of the UN for what purpose? You are not upholding international law or its principles. So the statement, I actually did a whole comparison on my show of the statements made by Wang Yi, Lavrov, and Jaishankar. And both Wang Yi and Lavrov, the Chinese and the Russian, started by saying this is violation of the UN Charter, this is violation of international law. Yes. It is US and Israel who have attacked Iran and destabilized. India, nothing like that. As if ke hawa se utar gayi jang. It just happened, this conflict. The second thing is, Modi went and said, with full conviction, I stand with Israel. So India has taken chances. So where is the neutrality? That is a question that I hope that would be the first question. Either
basically, there is no neutrality, but there is a pretension of complete neutrality.
But he didn't mention anything about the Prime Minister's speech in his statement at all, as if it didn't happen. It happened 2 days before the war started, right? And I think somebody would have definitely asked him that question in the parliament, and he would have to explain what Modi meant by "I stand with Israel." He can't say he didn't mean it. Like sometimes White House people clarify when Biden is to say stupid shit, then they would clarify saying, no, he didn't mean that. So Jaishankar doesn't have the guts to say Modi didn't mean this or that. I mean, he'll be out by tomorrow. The second thing was that he talked about the Iranian ships, but he did not talk about the ship which was sunk, and he would have had trouble trying to explain what happened with that ship. So I think that India's statement is very weak. It makes India look like a vassal state of Israel and the United States. It makes India look as if it has no strategic autonomy. And India's strategy of being into multi-alignment, not non-aligned. They have gone back to non-alignment. That is what he's trying to project. So what happened to multi-alignment? How are you aligned with Iran from this particular statement? I would like to know.
But if I may talk to you now about the LPG crisis. Now, how serious is the impact of the LPG crisis which is playing out across the world on India specifically? And the shivers have already begun to be felt. Yesterday in Karnataka, the hoteliers and the restaurant owners, they've closed down the restaurants, saying that the commercial gas cylinders, their prices have shot up. There's a shortage of supply. Similarly, crematorium in Pune, there were reports that the crematoriums have shut down. I'm reminded of those COVID days. What is going to be the impact on India? And we also don't have any kind of a policy for LPG reserves.
So this is very important, and I will try to be very succinct, but also very clear. And if possible, if you can also extract this particular answer and float it as a separate video, it might be very helpful. Number one, India is the most vulnerable when it comes to gas. Okay, 85% of India's gas comes from Qatar.
Hormuz.
Remember, it comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So India's about 60% of India's energy, 60 to 70% comes from the Strait of Hormuz, then China, then Japan, and South Korea. These are the four countries which are most affected. With gas, it's India and Europeans who are most affected with gas. Now, the thing is, in India, the petrol and diesel is not subsidized. But this year, India is spending 1.8 to 2 trillion rupees on subsidizing the LPG. And so that cylinder that you get, it is heavily subsidized. So all of these natural gas utilization, even I think Ubers which use CNG, I think would be affected by this, right? So anybody who's using gas, that is heavily subsidized by this. So what is happening now is because of the price of gas has gone up by 40%. So India is losing, I think, about $8 to $10 billion. So now the decision for India is, will India increase the subsidy on this or allow the prices to go up? But this is the triple whammy. There's a triple whammy. The triple whammy is, if you notice, in the last 48 hours, the value of dollar has gone up, rupee has gone down. So now, even if you are importing the same amount of gas, you are paying more in dollars and more. Yes. So India has a triple whammy, that it is the cost of gas is going up because the supply is down, the cost is going up because rupee is down, and then the decision is, can India subsidize it or not? But besides subsidy, there is also the shortage of supplies. There is no gas.
No, but I was speaking to one of the LPG federations day before yesterday on the phone. I happened to speak to a gentleman. He's heading the LPG Federation. And he said that India has implemented ESMA, that is the Essential Commodities Act. And they have asked all the oil refiners to ramp up the supply and production of LPG. Now, do you think that that can suffice really, even if they ramp up the LPG production in the country?
So right now, the countries have three options, right? All countries have options. Either let the price go up on the pump, basically, which means that there will be political turmoil in countries where it is too expensive. This is going to happen in all Asian countries, and for Europeans with gas, because they'll have to buy American gas, which will be very expensive, far more expensive. So that's one thing. The second choice is for the government to subsidize heavily this stuff and increase debt or reduce some other expenditure. But there's also the problem of where to find it. Even if you have the money and you're willing to bet, if it's not coming through the Strait of Hormuz, who is the alternative? If you remember, there were 8 Indian Navy people who were sentenced to death in Qatar for spying for Israel. So Modi went and made a deal with Qatar and about $28 billion of natural gas. So India has committed to buying a certain amount of natural gas from Qatar in exchanging for Qatar forgiving those 8 Indians for spying for Israel. So there is that why India is tied to Qatar, and Qatar has stopped producing gas right now because it was attacked. It's not just the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Their production is also down. So you're going to have this challenge. So the immediate solution for countries...
Let me just clarify. Is there any other outlet from where India is buying gas? You were saying that 80 to 85% of the gas is coming through Strait of Hormuz. Then India has also invested in Qatar, and they've pledged that, okay, we'll buy from Qatar as well. But their entire region is affected. So which means that India gets zero LPG supply. I mean, it's no, totally...
There are 3 other places where you can go, which is Russia, US, and Canada. So... Okay. So in America has, in another humiliating fashion, given India the license. Have you seen the license actually?
Yes.
Given a license, I think it's called 150, to buy Russian oil, but very limited Russian oil, which is on boards after March 5th for 1 month. So India can buy basically petroleum, but gas, there is no discussion about it. So, and for Trump, this is a great opportunity to sell gas at a much higher price, because what is happening is gas is coming by ship, not by pipeline
Yes.
to India, right? So there is a double cost to it. First, you have to liquefy it and then load it up and then come back and reprocess it. So there are two extra processes. Like, for example, when Germany was getting from Russia, they were just getting it through the pipeline. So there was a lot of savings. So the Europeans are also deep trouble with regards to gas. They will have to turn to US and Canada or Russia, and Trump. Putin is like smiling away, I'm sure, right now, because Putin has offered gas and to the Europeans too. So India will have to turn to either Russia or US or Canada. And I think India can spend those $500 billion that they promise now and buy gas from the US. But it will be very expensive. Under normal circumstances, the gas from the US is expensive, but the market price has gone up by 42% for gas. It's nearly...
So you're saying that for India, gas is really a big trouble at the moment, and in whatever fashion, the Indian government is trying to convince the people, but they cannot tide over this crisis.
It is very serious. India is the biggest, most vulnerable of all countries when it comes to this. So in China also has lots of problems, but China's problems are that the cost of manufacturing is going to go up because of this. So all the advantage that they had in exports and manufacturing, they're going to lose that. That will also affect India negatively, by the way, because most of India's exports are dependent on intermediaries which are imported from China. For example, 80% of the iPhone comes from China. Most of the things that go into the pharmacy, exports of India, also the ingredients come from China, and their production will go up. So it's a global mess. That's why I actually wrote an article with Santosh Mehrotra, the prominent Indian economist, who is a very good friend of yours, right? We wrote an article called "The Energy Shock," and that article has received so much attention that today, for the first time, I was introduced on Al Jazeera as an expert in economy, an economist. I'm an IR expert, but the point is that it is a very serious challenge, and there should be more pressure from India to end this war.
Do you think that India will ever be in a position now to say anything to either Netanyahu or Donald Trump? You're saying that India must put pressure to end this war. But can India really open its mouth? Can Modi really break his silence? And his silence is baffling at this point of time. And knowing very well that in what deep troubled waters India is in.
So if you look at those 16 agreements that Modi made with Netanyahu on this trip, the traffic of technology is one way. India is getting technology from Israel. For Israel, India is a big market, the biggest weapons market. So Israel is selling weapons to India. So that is the influence that India has over Israel. The second is we are also sending now cheap labor, low skill labor to Israel. So for Israel, are these two things so important that India can exert pressure on Israeli? Israel doesn't listen to anybody when it comes to its foreign policy, etc. So India has no leverage over Israel, but Israel has a lot of leverage over India because everything in technology, for example, if you look at Tejas 1, the entire avionics come from Israel. The radar comes from Israel. The missiles come from Israel. The missile technology, all of that. So India is very dependent on Israel for advanced technology, and the same on the US. So India's strategic autonomy from a foreign policy perspective has shrunk. And if the Arabs interpret Modi's trip to Israel as it has taken sides with Israel, maybe UAE will be happy, but the rest of the Arab world is not going to be happy. And remember, there's 1 crore people who work in the Gulf, in the Middle East, from India, and the remittances that are coming from the Middle East to India are about $35 to $40 billion every year, and the trade is $200 billion. It is 20 times the trade with Israel. So it was a stupid mistake for Modi to go there and so openly 2 days before the war to take sides. People are remembering that. They're not reacting at the moment because they're so worried about what's going on with Iran. And if this war doesn't end, can you imagine if thousands and thousands of people, already 67,000 people from the Middle East had to come back? Can you imagine if of those 1 crore, even if 10 lakh people, 10% come back to India, what will happen? Remittances go down, they will need jobs, there'll be higher unemployment. So this crisis is not good. If India had any influence on Israel or the US, they should have used it to say, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the most important part of the conversation, what you've explained, is the gas crisis, the big gas crisis which India has to face, the LPG crisis, how India is going to tackle the situation. We'll have to keep our fingers crossed. Thank you so much, Dr. Muktedar Khan. It's quite a late night now for you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much.